Namaskar. In this episode of Dil Se, we're going to talk about the aftermath of the results of the Lok Sabha elections. Well, the people of India decided that it's not going to be 400 Paar. The people of India decided that it was time to bring some sanity into the political system and ensure that the government is run, at least during the next 5 years, through a process of consensus, where debate will be central to the passing of legislation, where the opposition voices will be heard, and that legislation that will be passed will be done through a process which has been conventionally accepted, namely that issues of importance go through standing committees or select committees, and then a legislation is passed after a debate in the House. But how did this result come about is a question that we're going to discuss today in this episode of Dil Se. And we have, as a coincidence, 4 lawyers with us, including myself, who are going to be part of this discussion. Lawyers who are, I think, the future of India in a sense. They have minds which have the capacity to choreograph a great future of this country. So let me introduce my very, very important guest today. On the right side is Manish Tewari. Well, who doesn't know Manish Tewari? For many reasons, he has been at the center of a lot of debate, a lot of public discourse, and this is his 3rd term of parliament that he has won this time in 2024 from Chandigarh. He originally won his seat from Ludhiana, then from Anandpur Sahib, and now, of course, from Chandigarh. Though he won by a narrow margin, but Chandigarh is the most literate constituency in this country. So winning from Chandigarh means something. Manish Tewari has been at the heart of Congress politics right from his younger days. He was head of the NSUI, I think, from 1986 to 93. And then from 1998 to 2000, he was head of the Youth Congress. And he has been, he is part of the culture of what we call the inclusive India that we constantly talk about. Manish Tewari's father was a master of Punjabi language. He was teaching in Punjab University. And a tragedy in 1984 when he was a victim to a terrorist attack. His mother was part of the postgraduate institute in Chandigarh. She was a dentist, and she headed the oral science department of the institute. So Manish is a voice in Parliament. I have seen him several times in the Lok Sabha talking about significant issues, and he is a great writer on numerous subjects, but especially in defense. So thank you very much, Manish, for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then, of course, my good friend, colleague in the Supreme Court, a colleague for many years, Vivek Tankha. He's also now, this is his second term. Second term in the Rajya Sabha. And if you go to Madhya Pradesh High Court, Indore, you will find that Vivek Tankha is a gentleman who is omnipresent. He is a leader of the Paar. His father was a judge in the High Court, and he is known for his public causes. He is an active member of Rotary, and during the pandemic, I remember the kind of outreach that you were capable of doing was actually something that resounded in India in every newspaper. It was wonderful work that you did for us.
Thank you.
And thank you, Vivek, for being here. Of course, in Parliament, I'm a colleague of his in Parliament, and when he speaks on issues, the amount of clarity that he brings to issues in the House when he speaks is something that is to be admired. On my left, of course, is my young friend from Tamil Nadu, Karti Chidambaram. I think he's as cerebral as his father. Of course, he's more sporty. This is, of course, his 3rd term, second term in Parliament. I think you lost in 2014 by a fair margin, and then, of course, won in 2019 by over 3 lakh votes, and then, of course, in 2024 over 2 lakh votes, right? And Karti did his business from Texas University, a school of business administration, then came to Cambridge, did his law, and after doing his law, he set up an Indian management consultant company, and he does consultancy work in real estate, in hospitality, and very sporty because into the tennis world. And tennis takes him across, and so and of course, the important thing about Karti, he's a fighter. His father is a mature. He talks very deliberately, slowly, highly cerebral on economic issues. Karti can talk about any issue that you can bring up, which can be discussed. So thank you very much, Karti, for being here. So I want a sense, as you know, Dil Se is a program where we don't ask questions. I want a sense, why do you think and how do you think Congress increased its numbers from almost double its numbers to 100 now? And how did Modi come down from 303 and lost 63 seats in Parliament? Do you have a sense of that, Manish?
Sir, I think the context of this election is important to put this discussion in perspective. In November of 2003, the BJP won Madhya Pradesh, they won Chandigarh, they won Rajya Sabha, and therefore there was a sense of infallibility that the 2024 elections is a done deal. There will be 400 plus.
Mm-hmm.
And the opposition obviously was to that extent dispirited. If you recall that in the December of 2023, specifically on the 13th of December 2023, when there was a smoke bomb attack in the Lok Sabha, the authoritarian manner in which it was dealt with when the opposition asked questions, with the entire opposition being expelled lock, stock and barrel from both houses of parliament.
146 of them.
Maybe
70 or both
put together.
Oh, I see.
This was absolutely unprecedented. And I think somewhere deep down that started troubling the people of India. That you were possibly heading towards a one-party state. That 2024 may be the last elections that this country will see. There was talk which was articulated by members of the ruling party that the Constitution of India would be either substantially amended or even abrogated and replaced by a new constitution.
Do you think that's because of the Paar slogan?
That's right. I think it's basically, it's a 400 Paar slogan coupled with the rhetoric which was coming out of their leaders, which touched a very raw nerve somewhere. Coupled with that, of course, had been the undeniable assault on the idea of India over the past 10 years. You know, the weakening of institutions, the misuse of law enforcement and intelligence instrumentality, and nobody knows that better than you and Vivek ji here. So all put together, it created a sense of serious unease, especially among the marginalized sections of society, whether linguistically, religiously, or even from an economic standpoint. Then, of course, there was this entire spectre of crony capitalism, which had become almost offensive and ugly, if I can put it in those words. And then, when the elections came, people of India are invested in the ballot box. And they brought the BJP down substantially. In fact, if people would have had the confidence that the opposition can actually win, these numbers would have been much more. That's my sense of it.
Do you agree with that?
I agree with him, but another perspective. Kapilji, last 10 years, we saw a very authoritarian rule.
Right.
And it kept on developing. Towards the end, it was unbearable. There was some sort of a aversion of the civil society, read with thinking people. And this percolated down. And gradually, this reached to the marginal sections as the election progressed. Kapilji, in the first two phases of election, I didn't see the wave as intense, the undercurrent. It was not a wave, the undercurrent as intense. As the election progressed, as we talked of the constitution, as we talked of 400 Paar and abrogation of constitution, reservation was a big issue. And I saw the shift coming. But again, it's very strange that on 22nd of January, you had the consecration ceremony of Ram Temple. And in the 100-kilometer periphery of Ayodhya, BJP has lost. While on the same issue, we couldn't counter them in Madhya Pradesh. It's a very strange situation. While Ram is not an issue in UP, but it continues to be an issue in Madhya Pradesh. But Madhya Pradesh, again, since I come from that state, essentially it was a BJP state, a Jansangh state to begin with.
It was the heart of the Hindutva agenda.
And the first mistake that we committed as a Congress was
Saklecha, Chhagar,
yes,
all
of
these
course,
people.
remember that. But the first mistake that we committed as a Congress was to let Chhattisgarh get divided. That used to be the Congress fortress. And that used to supplement numbers to ensure a Congress rule in Madhya Pradesh. But Chhattisgarh going away, it became a tougher matter.
The same story with Telangana, no?
Telangana. So you were in the cabinet at that time, and you would know better than us. So what happened in Madhya Pradesh was that the Vidhan Sabha election, for all the reasons which I don't go into delve deep into, left us in a state of shock. And then there was a flurry of activity of our people leaving the party. All kinds of people. Some of there were news about big people leaving. Some of them are our friends also.
Yes.
And it became a situation where the whole party edifice, or you can say the energy or the motivation collapsed. It's from that point that we started the campaign. We were just 3-4 of us who were traveling from place to place in an AICC helicopter, bolstering up the motivation of people. But the point is that somewhere, as a party, we failed in Madhya Pradesh. One, to gauge the situation. Two, to remedy the situation. And to create alternative leaderships as the time went on. If you just go back in retrospect, in Madhya Pradesh, nothing has changed after 1980. Whoever was in power in 1980, he or she, or the next generation, continues to rule the roost. Are you trying to say that 7.5 crore people have never produced a leader in 40-50 years? So Congress has to reinvent itself also in a lot of places.
We'll come to that later. I am somehow in some disagreement with some of the views that you've expressed. Now let me give you talked about the Dalits and all, the 400 Paar slogan resulting in a shift in the vote. If you look at the vote share of the BJP, both amongst Dalits and tribals, it is still more than the Congress.
But they might have contested more seats than us. I don't know whether...
No, they haven't. They haven't.
contested.
They have contested more seats, but in South India, they cannot contest in many of the seats. But if you look at the vote share of Dalits is more, the vote share of tribals is more. I think it's much more than, my own feeling is it's much more than that. Because I think this was perhaps one of the most unequal electoral battles in the history of this country.
Maybe, Kapilji, each state has its own story.
Absolutely.
Yes, exactly. For example, in Uttar Pradesh, the story was different. In Madhya Pradesh, the story was entirely different, right? So I think that we cannot analyze the victory or the defeat of the Congress depending on factors like this. These are all local factors. And you talked about Ayodhya. In Ayodhya, if I may say, the reason why they lost Ayodhya, because all the land has been occupied by people who are coming from outside. The most expensive real estate in the country today is Ayodhya, right? And the small shopkeepers, they've lost their trade. All the merchants have lost their trade. People from outside have come and settled. So there was an intense anger within the local community, and that's how that verdict came. I don't think it is symptomatic of the larger picture. This is my own feeling, but I may be wrong. Come, Karti, let me.
Since you alluded to tennis, I always said that an Indian election is like a tennis match. Each set is independent of another set.
Yeah.
Whether you win a set 6-love or 7-6, you still have to start the next set at love. So what happens in one state sometimes has no bearing on what's happening.
Right.
For example, it's completely independent. In Tamil Nadu, we have each state has its own political grammar. There is a political grammar in Tamil Nadu, but that doesn't translate into the same grammar in, say, Karnataka. Even though we have such close cultural ties, in fact, even Bangalore is still a significant Tamil city. But in Bangalore city, we didn't win a single seat, whereas in Chennai, we win all the seats. So each state has its own political grammar. The fact is that this is such a protracted electoral process. It started, for example, in my constituency, we voted on April 19th and we counted on June 4th, 45-day lag. It felt like we were running some zonal elections and the issues were also getting shifted from one week, one phase to another phase. Because the rhetoric of the BJP, the rhetoric of the Prime Minister was very different on what it was on April 19th. And by the time it reached a culmination on June 1st. So each state voted on different issues. There were local factors and we have to look at it cumulatively and see why this verdict has come. For example, in Tamil Nadu, which we have always been a distinctly anti-BJP state. People want Tamil culture, Tamil identity to be preserved. And they believe that BJP is a upper caste Hindutva party. So they reject it. And also the BJP did not have alliance with any of the major political parties. They tied up with very sectarian caste outfits. And that also showed in the results. Whereas our alliance, the Congress alliance, which is the India alliance under the DMK, was intact. In fact, we only had an addition with Kamala Hassan coming in. So the sheer arithmetic and the political grammar of the state ensured we had a 40-love.
But this talk about that the BJP has upped its share.
It's a very superficial analysis, sir, because the BJP tied up with a lot of caste-based parties. And these caste-based parties put up caste candidates who contested on a BJP ticket. So this is not a pure BJP vote. This vote is for that candidate because he belongs to a particular caste and there was caste consolidation in many seats. And they got the vote. So to erroneously assume that that vote is a BJP vote is wrong because the next election, if they don't have a tie-up with those caste parties and those caste candidates don't contest, this vote will not come. Even in Sivaganga, there was a specific caste party which contested on a BJP ticket and there was a caste consolidation behind that candidate. Not enough, obviously, to win, but we can't assume that that caste will always vote for BJP. So it's a little exaggerated.
In Madhya Pradesh, Kapil, if you remember, we have a tribal party.
Yes.
We had parties of SC. Every region in Madhya Pradesh has a party.
Yes.
Don't you think we failed to tie up with them?
Absolutely.
A tie-up would have been a different result in the assembly and later also in the parliament.
Yeah, but if this large analysis, Manish, how does it explain the victory of the BJP in Odisha? It doesn't explain.
See, first of all, if you were to rewind back to 2019, parts of South India notwithstanding, in 2019 was held under the overhang of the Pulwama terror attack
Correct.
and the Balakot action which followed. Now, that created a significant amount of feeling of nationalism across the country. And therefore, the 2019 result panned out in a particular manner.
Correct.
Kerala, Tamil Nadu were exceptions to that rule. But even Karnataka, the BJP did well. They were able to pick up seats in Telangana. Andhra has its own political grammar. But this time, in 2024, in the absence of a black swan event, you had real issues playing out on the ground.
Price.
So, price rise, unemployment,
Yes.
right? Income inequality, the feeling that everything over the past 10 years had been given to one particular industrialist. Right? So, therefore, they were, and then you had, of course, local factors playing everywhere. So, that's why you have this pish-pash of a result where you cannot really pin it down to one focal central issue.
That's correct.
Which had given the BJP the momentum in 2019.
But this factor doesn't play out in Madhya Pradesh, it doesn't play out in Gujarat, it doesn't play out in Chhattisgarh, it doesn't play out in any of
But
these
one
states.
feeling is common. People are feeling relieved and independent.
Yeah, that's true, that's true.
Today, a journalist is happy, a
Yes.
policeman is happy,
Correct.
a lawyer is happy, a businessman is happy. They won't feel relieved by this result. I think Indian democracy has succeeded in a
balance has come
Yes.
back. They all think there's some sense of, because they didn't want to give a free pass to the ruling party, so they could steamroll and bulldoze. This bulldozer was actually a symbol that said we will use the bulldozer everywhere, and that was actually that hurt a lot of people.
This election has exposed a couple of myths. The first myth is that there is in fact a limit to religious polarization.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes,
The
absolutely.
second myth it exposed is that you cannot run crony capitalism and populism hand in hand. You may give free ration to 75 crore people, but if the superstructure of the edifice that you're trying to create is a Shibor model, it is not going to fly. The third is there is a limit as to how much you can harvest false narratives that media hide. And the fourth myth it busted is that there is a limit to resources. They can take you so far, but no further. And fifth, most importantly, at a very subliminal level, it was a rejection of vendetta politics. And this breaking of political parties, the sheer immorality with which things were done, and it was then kind of spun off as some great Chanakyan miracle which was being performed. People may not have spoken, right? And then this feeling of an unknown fear. I mean, from 2014 onwards, people started even making routine conversations on WhatsApp, on FaceTime.
They were not sure. They were not even sure.
See, yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. The one thing that we've not mentioned is that the Hindu-Muslim rhetoric, anti-Muslim rhetoric, really never worked.
Never worked.
Never worked.
And will not work again.
Will not work again, right? And thank God for it,
Thank.
that they are reduced to 240, that they'll not be able to propagate that in the years to come. But apart from that, there's another very important factor which I think resulted in Modi's downsizing. The kind of speeches he made, talking about Mangal Sutra,
Hindu-Muslim.
buffaloes, your bank balance will be taken away, the tutti in your house will be taken away. Now, ordinary people watching this realize that what's happened to our Prime Minister, right? And they were wondering as to why a Prime Minister of a country is saying this. Now, the reason why they won the 2019 was the capture of the mainstream media. And the reason why they lost 2024, that they could not capture the social media.
You're right.
Right?
Which is absolutely
It's the social media that I think won us this election.
Alternative media, independent YouTubers who would make satire, who would communicate more plainly in a local language and localize their communication. In fact, a senior journalist, a very seasoned journalist who traveled in UP said for the first time she saw people in villages mocking the Prime Minister.
You're right.
That she actually told me was telling, because they always had a grudging respect for the Prime Minister before. They would never mock him personally, but this time they started mocking him. And the fact that they didn't allow that Rangila candidate to contest, that again had an effect. And
It was talked about.
And the fact that sir, in Indore and in Surat, I think,
Yes,
where they had
yeah.
somebody withdraw. Then again they said, oh, this is going to be the case. There will be no elections anymore, and they will strong up everybody and pushing
But
them
I
out.
think they were cognizant of this reality that social media is a huge narrative builder and a narrative disseminator, and therefore they had built up a pretty formidable machine. And over the past 5 years, all of us have been witnesses to the fact as to how repeated attempts were made to try and control the social media, try and put a legal application to it. See that you are able to circumscribe it like you did to old media.
And what the Supreme Court granted stay.
Yeah. So therefore, and ultimately, there was also a reaction against that. People did not want that, their Facebooks, their Twitters, their Instagrams, their other means of expressing an opinion is going to be subject to some kind of a censor. So this overkill that, we are there, we have arrived, it is going to be my way or the highway. I think it grated with people deep down. And I go back to what I said earlier. If there would have been a sense in the people that yes, the opposition can win it,
We would have won.
these numbers would have been much greater.
In other words, if you were to have an election
Actually-
today, this number would not be 240, but would be 160.
Yeah.
But Kapilji, another big
And the
factor,
vulnerability of the man has now been established.
another big factor which we are missing out, the devaluation of institutions.
Of course.
It was weighing with the people. Whether it is the courts, whether it is the election commission, whether it's the CBI, the agencies, the misuse, all that was weighing a lot with the
It
people.
is as if the Prime Minister was above the law.
That's
He
it.
could say anything.
One-sided action against members of the opposition.
Opposition.
Listing a sitting chief minister.
Two of them. Two of them.
One who just got resigned. Two chief ministers are not. They're not getting bail. It was very telling. People said if this can happen, they can arrest any chief minister and put him in jail.
That was a big issue.
That had an effect.
And the electoral bonds issue.
Yes, it exposed it.
It's exposed them completely. And people talked about how did they have so much money and how do they have so much money. And then they had captured everything. They had captured the reservation of helicopters. The opposition didn't have space. But having said all that, they swept certain states without an opposition. How do you explain that? That's the other problem.
Maybe there's been a societal change in certain states. That's the only explanation I have. I don't have first-hand knowledge. Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh, there was just societal
How do you
change.
explain that?
It's sort of there's.
I think Gujarat, the Prime Minister himself being from Gujarat, I think does weigh heavily with people. Number two, in 2017 we came very, very close to defeating them. We were up to 91 seats. Had we maintained that momentum, Gujarat may have panned out differently. Odisha, because Naveen Patnaik had been there for such a long time, and
brought in an officer who
and there was also
Chhattisgarh, the same thing. Madhya Pradesh, the same thing. Uttarakhand, the same thing.
Himachal, very surprising.
Yes, that's surprising.
We have a government there.
How do you explain all this? If these are the factors that we are discussing and analyzing, none of these worked in these states. And so my worry is that I think what we need to look, now we move on to the next thing. If you look at the Congress party's victories, now let's be really honest with ourselves. Where have you won seats? Kerala, no question of the BJP being there. Either left wins or UDF wins. So you won there, 15 odd. Tamil Nadu,
Alliance is very
it's
strong.
the alliance is very strong, so you went there, won there.
Punjab,
Maharashtra, the alliance is very strong, so you won there. Punjab, between AAP and you, the others were decimated, so you won there. Now tell me, in Uttar Pradesh, you won because of your alliance with Akhilesh. So basically, the victory, the numbers that the Congress party has gotten, let's be candid now, the numbers that we have gotten is on the strength of our alliances. But wherever there is a one-to-one fight, we've been beaten badly. How do you analyze that?
Values, sir. In the alliance, for example,
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the numbers increased because of your alliances,
definitely.
right? So
That-
how do you analyze that?
No, listen, having said that, there is no doubt that the two yatras which were carried out, right, that did help in crystallizing issues in the minds of people.
Right.
And in fact, I think it was in one of the papers yesterday that along the route of the yatra,
First yatra.
41 seats, the Indian National Congress and its allies picked up. So, therefore, the fact that you were able to take the concerns to the ground, or Mr. Gandhi was able to take the concerns to the ground, in the absence of any alternative means of dissemination except the social media, which is also a very crowded space and a very contested space, did also add to the momentum of the India alliance. So, but yes, I think it's a cause of worry that if you draw a blank in Madhya Pradesh, if you pick up one seat in Chhattisgarh, you pick up one seat in Odisha, you lose Uttarakhand, you lose Himachal Pradesh. Of course, this is a cause of concern, and there is a need to go back to the drawing board and analyze it more granularly as to why this happened in this manner. But as I was saying earlier, in the absence of an overarching narrative, there were lots of narratives which were
Exactly.
going on the ground.
That's the point. That's the point I'm making. Even 41 seats you're talking about, part of it, ultimately, the arithmetic is on the alliances, ultimately, however you analyze it. I mean, the Yatra must have actually brought a lot of just eyeballs, right? People must have said, look, here is this young man who is moving and walking, hundreds of kilometers, thousands of kilometers. Of course, that must have helped a great deal. And that's why the percentages of the Congress party in each of these states where he went actually increased. So therefore, that's credit. Credit goes to him. But the fact still is that those increases only happen in the states where there are alliances.
We bring the secular sheen to the alliance. So minorities particularly are assured when the Congress is part of an alliance that this will be the secular sheen.
Right.
Tamil Nadu very clearly, even if the ADMK did not have an alliance with the BJP, the minorities only trust the alliance which has the Congress in it.
True.
Because we bring that secular sheen.
An interesting pan-India point is that there was a pan-India undercurrent.
That's correct.
You had to take advantage of it. Since we were a pan-India party, we took advantage and reached 9,900. Others who could take better advantage in their own states reached better figures.
Right.
So the lesson is that we need to strengthen our party,
Absolutely.
reinvent our party,
Right.
and for the next time, we must make sure that we take better advantage of the undercurrent.
Absolutely, without any doubt. Now, if you really take Uttar Pradesh, for example. The Uttar Pradesh combination, which made us win this election, is the coalition of the Dalits, the backwards, the Muslims, right? And it is this that ultimately won us this election. Part of it is that the Congress share has increased in Uttar Pradesh, right? The Muslims as en masse voted for us. And the Dalits realized that the 400 Paar slogan may result in, as you rightly said, amending the constitution and therefore losing reservation. And trust in minority had gone down. But that factor which worked in Uttar Pradesh did not work in any other state.
It didn't work in Bihar.
In Bihar, didn't work
Especially the tribals.
Right. Therefore, there again, what we need to do, and this is my own feeling, we should be looking and redraw the map of India into local areas.
Absolutely.
Right. And then see in the local areas which is that factor that works. Because it's very interesting if you take for example, the rural and the semi-urban areas in Uttar Pradesh. The SP and the Congress party in the rural areas together have 92% support.
Oh,
can you imagine? And in the semi-urban areas, you have 30 plus 80% support.
and urban?
Urban is much less. So now you know that if Congress party is to win the next election,
In the cities.
you have to win partly the cities, but you have to strengthen your rural and semi-urban vote. And that is in collaboration and alliance with another party which has that support.
Well, see, the urban India has always been a tough nut to crack.
Correct.
The only time we were able to crack it was 2009.
Right.
When we won every city from Thiruvananthapuram
Except-
right up to Jammu.
Except Bangalore.
Well, there could be an odd exception here or there. So yes, urban India definitely requires a lot of working on, not only by the Congress party, but even by the India Alliance. I think Delhi would be going to polls. Perhaps at the end of this year.
Haryana?
Right after Haryana,
Right after Haryana.
Maharashtra and
Jharkhand.
And, you would have Delhi going for polls.
Yes.
So therefore, how do you get the urban voter, into this narrative? With actually this narrative of this being the last election, the constitution being under siege, should have really resonated much more with them. But for reasons which need to be analyzed, it didn't. And it actually resonated far more clearly with rural and semi-urban India, as you were pointing out.
Right.
So therefore, I don't think that this is the time to, sit back on your haunches and say that, all right,
Tomorrow is too early to start. If you ask.
Yeah.
Too late to start, rather.
Yeah, I agree completely.
State-specific strategies.
Yes.
There can't be this one-size-fits-all.
And stability. In other words, you appoint your prabharis immediately. Yet you appoint your people on the ground immediately. Start working from tomorrow. Otherwise, it's going to get too late. 2024 is really the Paar ki ladai. 2029 is going to be an Paar ki ladai because now you have a prime minister and his party who are not invincible. And now the people will be far more open in expressing their views than they've done in the past. And now there'll be no strangulation of Indian democracy.
And for all you know, we may have a midterm poll.
Well, that I don't know. That I don't know. And you know, basically we want India to move forward. We want any government to survive, but at the same time, that government must be an inclusive government. And I'm sure that the two partners of the present government, especially the TDP and the JDU, are parties who are embedded in the secular mode, in the sense that the support base is also the minorities in a substantial way. And they're not going to let that go. And, you know, the TDP has in its manifesto referred to reservation for Muslims to the extent of 4%. And they have reiterated it. So these are not straws in the wind. The Prime Minister will have to be very, very careful in repeating the rhetoric that became, you know, the national rhetoric prior to 2024. Now, what do you think are the challenges before the BJP in the next election?
So the BJP, in my personal opinion, has maxed out on this muscular Hindutva agenda. They've maxed it out. They can't be winning elections or winning a new voter, touting the same thing. This is maxed out. They need to, unless they start delivering on the ground, on price rise, on jobs.
Well, they don't have an economic agenda.
They don't have it. This will be the last election they are winning.
I would tend to disagree. You see, what has happened in the past 10 years is that the fault lines, which were in fact already present post the partition of India, they have been able to sharpen them and exacerbate them depending upon the buttons that were pushed and the triggers that were pulled. That subterranean divide still remains there, alive and kicking. So under those circumstances, for the BJP, while it may be difficult, given the lay of their own coalition now, to keep going down that road, the desire to travel down that road will remain. Now, this time, other real bread and butter issues in some parts of India were able to kind of paper over this divide. But we would be completely deluding ourselves if we do not think, if we think that fundamentally the attempt to change the social ethos and the milieu of India to some extent has unfortunately succeeded. And therefore, the pluralistic, secular, inclusive parties actually will have to be far more vigilant in order to ensure that this slide is arrested once for all. Mere reliance upon the fact that the TDP or the JDU, because of their own political compulsions, will do the heavy lifting for us.
No, of course not.
I think
they're not.
I think
they'll rein in the idea. They won't do the heavy lifting, but they'll rein in the BJP.
So ideological clarity, a commitment to constitutional values, a clearly enunciated, articulated commitment to pluralism, to ensuring that income inequality is addressed in a serious manner by this government. After all, there are 230 India Alliance members in the Lok Sabha, are issues which need to be taken up or should be taken up, on priority, because ultimately the opposition now finally has the numbers to hold the feet of the government to the fire.
Absolutely.
And if the opposition is remiss in exercising that mandate to really stand for those constitutional values, which they made as the swan song of their campaign, then things may not really be all that rosy as we.
If the Hindutva agenda has percolated into the psyche of the Indian people, how do you explain the Bengal result?
No, but I'll speak about the Hindi heartland. Let me speak about the Hindi heartland. This is where the issue
Yes, I
rises.
agree.
Now, what I'm saying is, you have lost regional leadership or state leadership in the Hindi heartland states.
Correct.
One of the big reasons. Who were our chief ministers in Madhya Pradesh from 56?
All
Ravi
Brahmins.
Shankar Shukla?
All Brahmins.
No, but maybe, but they were big people. Kailash Nath Kaju,
Yeah,
D.P. Mishra,
yeah.
Shyamachand Shukla, P.C. Sethi, Arjun Singh, Digvijay Singh, Kamal Nath. They're all very big people. Same was the case in UP. Same was the case in Bihar. Now, where are the personalities? You have lost touch with the real civil society. I mean, lawyers, doctors. You were the centrist force of India. You have to regain that position
Which
of a
is why you
centrist.
lost leadership in all the regions in India and all the states.
You have to come. The centrist force of India has to regroup, re-strengthen, combine, and then challenge the fringe force. Today, the fringe force has taken over the centrist
It will
force.
always win the middle four squares in chess. It's always win the middle. You have to win the middle four squares, and we have to win the centrist vote. There's no doubt about that. And we can't veer this way or that way, but to focus on and also encourage regional leadership. And you know, I always say that we must now offer leadership at the doorstep. We can't have leadership in the mountain anymore. We have to. And the Bharat Jodo Yatra was a good effort by the Congress to say that the Congress leadership will come to your doorstep.
Yeah, but then you must identify those leaders, empower those leaders, and recognize them and respect them. That's very important. See the problem that's going to come, and I want your thoughts on it. We are not going to have elections in Haryana, right? In Haryana, the AAP will say, I'm going to fight, put up seats. Now, you see the interests of AAP in Delhi, the interests of AAP in Haryana, because they want to expand their base. So the next problem is going to be, how do you deal with these issues? That's a serious issue. Now, we'll have to draw the ideological line somewhere.
I don't know, I'm not qualified to speak about the alliance with AAP. Whether it will continue beyond the parliament election is something.
It's doubtful. My own opinion is
And
doubtful.
we must also consult the state units before any kind of alliance is formed. See, any alliance without the consent of the state unit of the Congress party never really works.
Now, we see what happened, the alliance in Delhi, where does it landed us?
In Madhya Pradesh,
Well, having said that, sir, the alliance, though of course it's a microcosm.
In Punjab,
it worked perfectly.
I agree, but therefore I'm saying,
you won.
it's a very complex issue is what I'm saying. It's very complex, and this has to be dealt with very, very...
You know, in Madhya Pradesh, I had all the regional parties in my house one day. Nitish ji wanted one seat. Gondwana wanted a few seats. Jayesh wanted a few seats. You know, all these guys were willing to join us in the state elections. It's not the central leadership. It's the state leadership which rejected the offer.
This is
The
problem.
center was interested that there should be an alliance.
This is the problem.
But it's a vicious thing. I mean, I'm not saying that only the center is responsible. Even the state at times has acted difficult. So you need to have a new blend. People who understand the real arithmetic of the state or willing to realize that we are not omnipotent. I mean, we are not everybody. We need a lot of support from the activists. We need a lot of support from lawyers, bar associations, trade associations. Where is the reach out? Where is the reach out?
No, where are the leaders there?
That's
Very
it.
few leaders.
Your
there.
frontal organization.
You are a leader in Madhya Pradesh. We have to have leaders like that all over the country. We just don't have them. And we never recognize them. And that's the mistake that the BJP is committing today. Today what's happening with the BJP is what happened with the Congress. The BJP is rejecting its leadership in the states also. It is anointing chief ministers who are not known anywhere.
First term.
First time as chief minister. The result is,
BJP is a 1.5 man leadership party, sir. So it's not the BJP or...
I thought it was 2.5.
And it doesn't have a parliamentary board which had the same heft as before.
Yeah, but just see what they're doing. They have sidelined chief ministers. One has won by 8 lakh votes and he was sidelined in his own state.
And in Haryana,
He should have been the chief minister.
Whatever I'm saying is, what you are pointing out about the Congress which it was wrongly doing, is exactly what the BJP is doing.
Same thing in Rajasthan.
In a worse way.
In Rajasthan, we succeeded, and I dare say part of the reason was that they actually sidelined Vasundhara. This is my own analysis. I may be wrong, and it's of course partly because of the good work that Gehlot and the good work that Pilot had done, and they worked together. So it's a mix of all these factors. But it's very important to realize that national parties must actually prop up strong leaders in the states and give them a free play in the joint. But that's not happening. And you have to go back to the drawing board and do that. And you have to have a very clear economic policy. I think there also, we are not really clear exactly what our economic policy is. Even the BJP is not clear, quite frankly. Because I think the basic problem in this country is at the bottom of the pyramid, you are not empowering people. You must understand that the Dalits and the backwards together form almost 60% of this country.
That's substantially correct, because if you go back to the 73rd and the 74th Amendment, whereby you created the Panchayati Raj institutions, the real empowerment of those institutions in terms of flow of resources has not taken place.
Yes.
So therefore, the distributive justice on the ground, even if let us suppose you have myriad schemes being run by the central government and the state governments, because the spread is so thin, ultimately the benefit is very minimal. That's why only a couple of schemes, like for example Manrega, succeeded, primarily because it had a very clear, sharp focus. And Manrega then was able to deliver over all these years, and this government was compelled to continue it despite wanting to discontinue it. So you're absolutely correct. I think the difficulty lies that the delivery system is still faulty. The delivery system needs to be fixed, even if you want to do distributive justice. And the problem is that to do distributive justice, you have to create wealth. And that's really not happened over the past 10 years, despite the rhetoric, because if you look at the budget deficits, the deficits have been growing year on year.
Look at the borrowing of the government of India.
It's gone up by 100 lakh crores in 10 years, from 52.
It's about 80 lakh crores.
It's a humongous figure it has gone up by. So therefore, under those circumstances, a very fine-tuned economic vision which delivers to the last man and the last row.
Let me take you on that, and I want your views. I think what the Congress party should do is that you start strengthening the federating units in this country. Your slogan should be more power to the states. It is something that needs to be done to do the delivery that you're talking about. You have to have more power with the states, both financial and in terms of distribution and allocation.
This was a big issue in the Tamil Nadu election.
It may be a big issue. It should be a national issue. The Congress should take a lead.
The share of tax revenue to the states.
Should take a lead that you give us the money, you let us spend, let us compete, allow us to borrow. It's impossible for the states to actually move ahead and take care of their poor and the marginalized unless they have the wherewithal to do it. And therefore, the nature of federalism has to change. And therefore, some entries in list 2 must be given back to the states. For example, education. Why should education be controlled by the union at all? It was originally with the states. So I think that you should go back to the drawing board, look at our constitution, look at the lists, look at where actually you need power to percolate down and how distributive justice can be done on the ground.
But see, the paradox here is that the Panchayati Raj institutions are really being hobbled by the state governments. I'll take you back to the 1989 debate when the PRI, when the 73rd, 74th Amendment was being conceived. The whole idea was that the money would flow directly to the Panchayati Raj.
That's from the state to the...
Directly from the center to the Panchayati Raj institutions. Ultimately, that bill fell in the dust.
Of course, yes.
Led to the 89 elections. Right. Then, when P.V. Narasimha Rao's government rebuilt, right, the money was then obviously routed through the states, which possibly.
And they didn't actually allocate resources.
No, and ultimately, That is where the bottleneck gets created because the members of the Legislative Assembly do not want empowered local institutions because it competes with them on the ground. And this is the logjam which really.
You are talking about Panchayati Raj. I'm talking about something larger than that. And I agree with what you say, that if allocations are made to the states, then they must pass on that.
Yes.
But the allocations to the states are not enough, is what I'm saying. That's where, see, how do you get a Dalit, educated Dalit, you tell me? How do you educate a Dalit? Unless you have more schools, unless you give the state the power to open schools. I would say just open schools only for Dalits. Why should you have others? Why shouldn't you have a 100% policy for opening schools for Dalits, for girls? Ultimately, unless you empower your children, they will become centers of economic growth themselves, because investment in human capital is the best form of investment. But that can only happen if you give states the power. So I think that is something that, and every state, including TDP, including your in Bihar, Nitishji, they will support this. So get that onto the agenda, and relook at some of the lists. And and get some amendments done in the constitution. If they don't, we can make it a national issue.
We should push the button, sir, to bring the federal spirit of these regional parties which are supporting this government to see where they stand when we bring about amendments which are going to strengthen.
It doesn't matter if I'm sure the BJP will oppose them because they don't want to give up power. Then it makes a national issue. It becomes an election issue. You have to move politically, no? So these are things that you need to think about, apart from, of course, the empowerment of your political representatives in the various states. I mean, this is something that I've been actually looking at and thinking about for a long period of time.
Even your tax structure,
Yeah.
it's become horrendous. You're scaring people. Today, people are leaving the country and settling outside India only because they're scared to.
That's your PMLA. That's your PMLA and the CBI.
No, but
right?
the whole edifice I'm talking about.
No, but why should the law be used in this fashion? This is complete. See, the PMLA and the CBI and the tax authorities here are an instrument of oppression. Today they become the instrument of oppression. The Election Commission is an instrument which helps the political party in power to do what it likes. The courts are hesitant to grant bail to people, right? The vice chancellor of the universities are captured. The governors play a political role. The money is all with the BJP. How does the opposition, with their hands tied up at the back, fight an election? You need to take this forward to the people. And this should be your new, outreach to the people of this country.
That's why the 2024 elections, in many senses, became between the people and the government.
Exactly.
It was people.
It was people versus the BJP, right? And we took advantage of that anger and that angst.
How do you explain, how do you explain the reduced margin of the Prime Minister Varanasi itself?
Exactly. And the other thing, the last thing I want to say, and I want your views on it. Quite frankly, I think that they didn't get the 240 seats.
They didn't?
They haven't got the 240 that they claim. Because I've heard horrendous stories of district magistrates going into polling stations.
No, we heard that also. Right?
No, I have heard firsthand.
No, we also got first-hand reports.
Something needs to be done about the electoral system in this country. Something drastic needs to be done. And I think the court should play a very important role in that. But if they don't, they would have let down the people.
So the election commission should be independent first of all. You start from there.
The process of election, what happens is that the district magistrate can go into the polling station. He can do what he likes. And why should the phases of elections be decided in this fashion?
They are touting one nation, one poll. One day of polling.
What is all this going on?
Why should they have phases of election?
And this EVM.
I'm sure this agenda of election was finalized by the Home Minister and the Prime Minister. Not the election commission. I'm sure.
Therefore, the opposition to take a very serious view of this matter and make it a national issue. I mean, we've just talked about so many things today, so many things to be done. We should go back to the drawing board and start doing them. But thank you very much. This has been a great discussion.
Great conversation as always.
Thanks.
And especially because all of us are lawyers.
Yes, I know. You should take the lead in taking India forward.
I'm sure, I think you as President of the Supreme Court Bar must need.
That we shall try. Thank you.